Alrighty, my friends, this is part two. So we're going to be talking now about, we're continuing our discussion on work-life balance, and we're looking at specific areas that can be balanced. So this is just a very informal conversation. So in part one, we're talking about, are you working your life away, and is the company really loyal to you, even if you're demonstrating the loyalty? Some of that is out of your hands, by the way, because if a company prefers to have a certain employee that might be a better fit, there's not really much you can do, and that can come after you. That person can come after you, or the values can change, the mission, the vision. Things can change. There can be a constant state of flux. You kind of want to keep moving and keep looking at opportunities. But that being said, so once you decide, okay, I'm going to balance my life, you've got to look at what areas you feel are lacking. And the way that you can tell, I mean, a lot of work-life balance material and literature say to rate the areas. So if you use a 1 to 10 scale, you identify the different areas. You might not even be aware that some areas are lacking if you don't put the time and attention into them. So for example, we talked in the other clip about family. If your family wants to go on a family trip and you constantly are saying no, 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 let's say you have extended family or nuclear family or whoever, and you can be assertive. There's a time and place to be assertive and say if you want to do something or don't want to do something. But what's it costing your relationships if you constantly say no and don't get together? Or with number two, like the friends, you don't want to work and then or you do want to work and then you don't see your friends or whatever the situation is. I think finding a balance, one thing I found very interesting is there's a cycle that seems to follow our society. I know a lot of people work in the evenings, and there are a lot of people that don't. I notice that a lot of events are set up in the evenings. They assume a 9 to 5 work schedule, and so therefore some meetings will get together at 7 or 8, or I even know that there are different psychology meetings that sometimes are in the evening. And so that I would love to go to some of these, but if you're busy working online during the evening and you have a live seminar, it may be challenging to do that. So these things are very important that you kind of have to ask, okay, what's it costing me? I know the dollar amount that I'm going to give up if I downshift, if I go from full-time to part-time, or full-time to contract, whatever the situation is you're asking. If you can create another income source or revenue stream, and then kind of take that plunge where you're downshifting and you're not losing out as much, test the longevity. One thing I've learned is test the longevity. So then what happens is then it becomes easier for you to downshift. One thing I noticed is with traveling, if you want to travel and you're doing live seminars, if you're doing them throughout the day, it makes being in a physical location when you're traveling difficult. So that could be point number 3 in terms of travel and leisure. So even if you create that style that you want, or you one step closer, are you able to fully commit to whatever you're doing in that moment? So if you're traveling, are you fully present in traveling? And I realize that even if you're taking work and traveling, you're taking work and traveling. And if you can love it, but you're not really sightseeing or you're not traveling and enjoying what traveling is about. So what I've learned is the intangible costs are harder to assess than the tangible costs. I mean, if you say, I'm not going to work at this company, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to earn half the pay, there's a certain amount that's going to affect your lifestyle. You could fill it up with something else. There's something more important, and this is point number 4, is that the energy frees up for the different areas of your life. See, when you say no to something, and then simultaneously something else is coming up, and you have something part-time to fall back on in addition, then what happens is you seem to have more courage to take chances. You have money saved up, or 6 to 8 months supply, or whatever the situation is. And you have things in place for you to quit or downsize. So, or readjust your schedule. One thing you can also do is tell your boss, I would like to work from this time to this time. It's going to take a little bit of seniority, or maybe you just ask for a different shift. And I find when you decide to cut on hours or rework your schedule to create space for the other areas, the space will bring the other areas there. It will, because it's going to put you into more social positions where you're going to be in group meetings, dinners, gatherings, things that you couldn't have done if you were working and you were not seeing these things. Some people combine these events, though, like a working dinner. Some people, they go to seminars and then hang out, and I know that I did. And then I would have meals with friends either before or after. I think I think also another thing too that we got to keep in point number 5 is your health. So sleeping 7 to 8 hours a day. So this is extremely important in terms of I interviewed the director of a sleep clinic here And he actually said 9 to 10 hours is what people used to sleep in the 1950s. And so there's a really good book, and you might have heard of it, of course. It's called Crazy Busy, and the author talks about how we're constantly on the go, frantic, frantic, frantic. And it's interesting because we're doing more, and we're sacrificing in other areas, as I mentioned in the first clip. We're not getting the exercise in many cases, we're not getting the proper rest, and we're overworking. So, for example, let's say you're an online instructor and you have a full-time job. Well, that's great if you're doing that. If a full-time online, that's even better. Maybe you're allocating your time responsibly. But if you're working during the normal working hours, and then you're doing your online work, that's like a double job. It's like 2 positions in the same day. Or some people have graduate work, or they're going to school and then they're working. I have students that have done amazing things. They got like 4 or 5 things. But I've actually talked to people that have gotten 2 hours of sleep at night. They have no balance. Or they say that they sleep on the weekends to try to catch up, which, as you know, can still throw your circadian cycle off. But point number 6 is you want to, of course, look at balance in your financial spending and financial areas. You want to keep the 6 to 8 months reserved, but then ask yourself, what else do you need to do to bring your life in balance? Number 7, any romantic relationships. That goes back to the family and friends also. Balancing relationships, because your social connections are really all that matter. And then 10, what headway, just what headway are you making in your career? What headway, where do you want to be with your career? What do you want to do? What's your plan? Because that plan will help you to take chances that are measured, that are not so impulsive, to allow you to make the calculated risk that you want. So if somebody says, well, I want to just quit my job, well, that's great. You want to quit your job now, what do you want to do? Some people don't have any idea, but you got to commit to making your dreams a reality and doing whatever it takes. You hear all these actors and musicians, for example, to become successful in the field, they took on a lot of waitering jobs with the eye that they wanted to have a career or calling. They were fulfilling their calling in acting or music. And so the work-life balance wheel, of course, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, you try to bring these areas of your life in the ways that we mentioned just a short while ago with all these areas, and then you kind of reassess. You kind of say, well, I want to add an hour of power. So that could be point number 11, a learning period. So outside of a program, outside of a degree, are you meditating or learning or something in the morning? So people create these rhythms. Now I used to, and this is one of the final points I wanted to bring up, I used to believe that, it's great to move for a position, and that's wonderful. Like if you want to go to Des Moines, or if you want to go to Lansing, Michigan, or wherever you want to go for a position, that's great. There's the opportunity. Are you going to stay there for a little while and then move, or are you willing to? Because that environment is going to affect your social interactions and everything. So a lot of people move for work, and then they give up a lot of other things in that process to be successful in that area. I've done both, where I've moved for work, then I've also moved because I wanted to live in a particular city. And what I found is that part you have to decide. Some people don't have the choice. They're with the military, and they don't have the seniority built up, or however it works with their status. But I've heard that we can put our preferences, and then this is where they're going to assign us. So depending on the nature of your work, you may or may not have the luxury that you're wanting immediately. But you want to try to design a lifestyle based on your hobbies or interests. If you like going to the beach, why wouldn't you live kind of close to the beach? John DeMartini talks about this in one of his CDs. He talks about, I wanted to surf, and I knew that in Texas I couldn't surf, so he had to move. So it's the idea that you want to put yourself to where people are doing what it is you're interested in, or where the opportunity for doing what you want to do is there. So this kind of situation is very important, to kind of have this balance of, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to go with it. And positioning yourself. Who is that? That author named Nino Quidone, he talks about positioning. That you're setting yourself up, and there's that other book, Who Moved My Cheese, right? So that idea, and I listened to that before I moved here, for example. That idea of listening over and over and strategizing to create that balance. So don't give up on your dreams, and make time for other things. Now, does it mean that in some cases, if you're in school, and I know what this is like, you go to school and then you're working, and then you have both, it's a lot, and some is temporary. So you're working a little extra here, you're cutting back in other areas, yes. but how about for a lifestyle? That's what we're saying. Uh, in the next video clip, we're going to talk about lifestyles. We're actually going to talk about the different ways that people live around the world, or just things, observations you might have known, and you can share them in the threads. But it's just interesting, or just even in the United States, the different positions and where we're going, and how you can be successful in any area that you're interested in, except that you got to be committed to it. So we'll be talking about that in terms of the work-life balance, and then also following the different lifestyles. So now we're bringing all of what we've talked about in the first two clips into this third clip. I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you in part 3.